So, for everyone who doesn't know me, my name's Katie Wysocki, and I serve as the Assistant Director in the Career Enrichment Network in the College of the Liberal Arts. I think we're welcoming in some non-liberal arts students tonight, so everyone's welcome for the resources, of course. We have tonight 5 alumni directly from the College of the Liberal Arts who have given up some of their time to share some really great advice of what the world of law school looks like, as well as a little bit of advice looking back on the application process and the selection process. I'm going to start with some bios that you may have reviewed in Nittany Lion Careers, but want you to know everyone's background. So we have 2 students who are first years, 2 that are second, and 1 in our 3rd year. Brenna's almost done, right? So we'll start with Genevievre Miller. She's a recent graduate in 2020. She's at Northeastern University Law School in Boston, Massachusetts. She graduated from Penn State this May, completing degrees in political science and African studies. During her time at Penn State, Genevievre got involved in UPUA, where she served as the student liaison to the State College Borough. This fall, she just entered her first year at Northeastern, and she hopes to pursue a career advocating for marginalized communities. Thanks for being here. Our second first year is Daniel Zahn. Daniel is a first-year law student at Stanford Law School, where he is a member editor of the Stanford Journal for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, and a member of the Naturalization Pro Bono Project, Outlaw, and the Jewish Law Student Association. Daniel graduated in spring 2020 as a Paterno Fellow, Schreier Scholar, and member of the Presidential Leadership Academy with Bachelor of Arts degrees in Communication Arts and Sciences, English, and Philosophy, and minors in French, History, Rhetoric, Jewish Studies, and Linguistics. Daniel served as president and captain of the Penn State Mock Trial Association and was involved with the University Park Undergraduate Association. He interned with the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education and the Lehigh County District Attorney. He completed research in Benin and studied abroad in London, England, Dublin, Ireland, and Besançon, France. And Daniel, those LSAT prep books are still sitting in my office from you trying to get rid of them for me last year. Next, we have Brendan Bernicker. He graduated in 2019. He is a second-year law student at Yale Law School. He graduated from Penn State with two Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy and Political Science and a Master's of Arts in Political Science. At Penn State, he was active in the Paterno Fellows Program and Rock Ethics Institute and was also a Schreier Scholar. In law school, Brendan focuses primarily on criminal justice reform, litigation, and policy advocacy. All right, and our next second year is Briah Gray. She graduated in 2018 and is from Clarksburg, Maryland, and a current 2L at the University of Maryland Francis King Carey School of Law. She graduated from Penn State in December 2018 with a double major in psychology and criminology. While at Penn State, Briah was captain of the cheerleading team and a Thon volunteer on the special events and OPP committees. While at law school, she serves as a staff editor on the Journal of Business and Technology Law, as well as secretary of the Black Law Students Association. Along with school, Briah works part-time as a law clerk at Maryland Legal Aid in the Consumer Law Department. Her interests and experience range from criminal defense law to transactional law. All right, and our 3L, Brenna Fisher is originally from Manassas, Virginia, and graduated from Penn State in 2018 as a sociology student marshal and the 2018 recipient of the Hetzel Memorial Award. She is currently a 3L at University of Wyoming, College of Law, in Laramie, Wyoming, which she attends on a full tuition scholarship. After graduation, Brenna will clerk for the Honorable Scott Scavadal, Chief Federal District Court Judge for the District of Wyoming, and then honor Greg A. Phillips of the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. She is an editor on the Wyoming Law Review Board, a teaching assistant for the Legal Research and Writing Program, a student in the Defender Aid Clinic, and the 2020 Brimmer Scholarship recipient. During her past 2 years in law school, she was president of Phi Alpha Delta Law Fraternity, a member of the Wyoming Trial Lawyers Association and the Women's Law Forum, and a volunteer for Equal Justice Wyoming. She has completed 2 judicial externships and spent her first summer as a research assistant for 2 professors. This past summer, she worked as a summer associate for Holland and Hart, an AM Law 200 firm. I'm sorry, I don't know the lingo. Saying that right. During her time at Penn State, she was a Paterno Fellow, a Schreier Honor Scholar, and a student in the Presidential Leadership Academy. She also was president of the Justice Association for 2 years and participated in Zahn, Liberal Arts Ambassadors, 2 study abroad programs, and 4 internships. So with that, today I have some questions to ask our panelists, as well as opening it up to our student attendees that are here. Please feel free to add your questions to the Q&A box and I will monitor those. I think to kick us off, now that we know a little bit about your background, as a career coach in the College of Liberal Arts, I meet with many students who come in my office and say, I'm going to law school and I think I want to go to law school, or I like law, that's my only option. So I would love for one or all of you to share when you decided and what your reason was, your why for going to law school, because I think that's just so very important to know. Whoever wants to go first.
I can start.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I obviously majored in criminology. I came to Penn State thinking I wanted to be a police officer. I ended up applying for an internship with the State College Police my sophomore year. I didn't get it. So I interned for a defense lawyer in town instead. And I loved working for him like more than I ever thought I would like the law. And then when I did finally work for the police department, I did not really like it that much. So I figured law school was the right choice.
Genevievre, did you want to go next?
I can go ahead. I had a similar path in a way. I was a psych major and a crim major, so coming into Penn State, I really thought I was going to do psychology. I wanted to be a psychiatrist, and then I learned I had to go to med school and quickly realized that wasn't really the best route for me, and I really was not good at math or science. So I really took time into the criminology field in that major, and I learned that I really loved criminal defense work, and I did 2 internships that kind of solidified that going to law school was the right path for me.
So I came into college thinking that I also wanted to go to med school and be a doctor. Realized that was not for me, and then it was my junior summer, going into my senior year. I said I was going to take a gap year, and then one night I just said no, I'm going to go to law school next year, and that was August. And we were going back like 2 weeks after that, and the next day I just picked up LSAT books and I went. Yeah.
Good for you.
In 6th grade, I watched a video about the First Amendment and decided I wanted to do First Amendment law, and then everything else in my life kind of led me to keep that conclusion, and we'll see if law school changes it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I came into Penn State as an economics major, and then I switched and was a philosophy major, and then now I joke that I'm just a philosopher at large. But I really love philosophy. I really love sort of thinking about big problems. I got involved in the political science program, later on in college, and I thought that I would end up doing more like policy work, and I was interested in using data analysis and things like that to figure out how to make especially the criminal justice system less horrendous. And as sort of trying to learn how to do the policy work more effectively, I spent a summer at the Public Defender Service in DC as an investigator, and I just had an incredible experience, representing clients and going and sitting with them in jails or going to their homes and talking to their families, and realized that as interesting as I found the policy work, there's nothing like having real clients and getting to work with them on things that really deeply affect them. And so I decided that summer, like days into that internship, that I was going to go to law school, and haven't really looked back.
Great. And I I think what I take away is that it was a firm decision, right? It wasn't anything you were wishy-washy about. It's an investment, so something to really wrap your brain around. So I want you to go ahead.
I will say, as much as I do feel like it was a firm decision, I applied to graduate programs other than law school, even into my senior year.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I knew I wanted to be in this space and to do sort of work with people in the system, but I thought about doing it in social work. I thought about doing it sort of still in a policy role and apply to PhD programs. I really hadn't totally decided to go to law school as late as, midway through the spring of my senior year.
Gotcha. So we have 41 students on the line right now, and I would imagine they range from first year to sophomore to juniors to seniors who are kind of making some of the same decisions you all were thinking about back then. What would be some of your advice you would share to your younger self as an undergrad going back, or what would you encourage students on the line right now to participate in that you did participate in to support your law school journey?
So I think that the best things that I did to prep for like law school and to make my decision, number one, internships. It sounds like pretty much everyone on this panel did an internship that was like law related and made them realize that's what they wanted to do. So if you can get experience working for a lawyer, a law firm, whatever, or anything law related, I think that's important. The other thing I think that was really, really helpful is the pre-law advisor. I went to her like so much, like that poor woman was probably like, get out of my office. She was reviewing my personal statement. She talked to me about letters of recommendation. Like she helped me put together my resume so that it was like geared towards law schools. And then the other thing I would say, I did not do super well in my LSAT. I studied and I took a course and I just like didn't do great. And I thought about taking it again, but I sort of was just like, I'm gonna apply to a bunch of schools and see how it goes. I don't have any regrets about not taking it twice. My roommate also took it twice. She did end up taking it twice and like got into a really good school with her second score. So I would say don't panic about the LSAT. Like it's not a fun test, but you'll get through it. And whether you do as well as you want, like I didn't do nearly as well as I wanted to, but it worked out fine. And my roommate didn't do nearly as well as she wanted to, and it worked out fine for her too when she took it the second time. So those are some pieces of advice because I know it seems kind of stressful and overwhelming applying to law school. I also thought it was helpful to cast a wide net and apply to a bunch of schools. I think I applied to 14 because I just like I wanted to go wherever was cheapest. That was my goal. So
we are still sending everyone to Kathy Guerin, Brenna, the pre-law DUS advisor, yes. And she actually shared this event for us tonight. So yes, she did.
She I think single-handedly got me into law school. So Kathy,
I think she is wonderful, and I tell everybody that she needs to be your best friend before you leave. So thank you so much. That's great. Someone else?
I'll touch on that. I think it's funny. I actually, going back, interned at the Public Defender Service in DC, and that really solidified my intent to go to law school as well as an investigator. But adding on to everything Brenna said, I think it's really important to make kind of connections with your professors or some type of professional in the field that you're looking into going to, in the legal field, if that, or a law student, because working with the professors really gave me the opportunity just to kind of see what I want to do and where to go to. I had Howie he's a crim professor, and he was great. He sat me down, looked at basically every single school, all the numbers and everything. And I think without him or some type of professional or professor, I would have been kind of lost. So I think even if you're unsure of what you want to do, or if law school is right for you, to just try to make those connections, because it really pays off in the long run. And if you do apply to law school, you're going to need them for a letter of recommendations and all of that stuff. So it's better to make those connections now so they actually know you and you can really have a good relationship moving forward.
Yeah, I totally second everything that Brenna and Briah both said. If I could add 3 quick things in reverse order for seniors, juniors, and then freshmen and sophomores. The first thing I think you should know, once you're in this process, is not to take things as a reflection on you or your abilities or whether or not you're going to be an outstanding lawyer. The LSAT is a brutal test. It's a very coachable and learnable test, which is in some ways a terrible thing because it doesn't actually measure the things that you would want it to measure. You should not take a bad LSAT score or a rejection from a law school or anything like that personally, or as a reflection on, you know, the value of the work you've been doing or the type of lawyer you're going to be. It's just, that's not what this process is designed to do. It's not designed to give individual feedback on how good of a lawyer you're going to be. And if you interpret it as that, you're just going to get, you know, mad and upset and feel bad about yourself. And there's no reason that you should feel that way going through this process. And so that's something, you know, if you're going through it now, or if you're going to start taking the LSAT soon, like something to keep in mind is, you know, you should go to law school because you want to go to law school, because you want to be a lawyer. And if you feel that way, you shouldn't let any part of this process, you know, take that away from you. Similarly, on the nuts and bolts grounds, and this is relevant to seniors, but especially for juniors, if I could go back and do the process differently, and the advice that I give people who are going through the process now is to start early in the cycle, you know, not early in law, not early in undergrad, but if you're going to be applying, you know, next fall, to start thinking over the summer about who's going to write letters, you know, start thinking over the summer about your personal statement. And the reason for that, is that I did a master's in political science, and I'm really a data person to some extent. And I did a ton of data analysis in the law school process that Daniel and I worked together on, and other people have seen this and gone through it. Applying to law school early in the cycle, if you apply September 1st versus January 1st, that's worth about 8 LSAT points, depending on the school where you apply. Very few people know that. Very few people will tell you that. But if you're starting the process, applying earlier in the cycle makes a big difference. There's a lot of schools that have rolling admissions, and once they fill up, they're done. And so it's easier to get in when you apply earlier in the cycle. So those are the two nuts and bolts pieces. I mean, the last thing, and I'll keep it brief, but for freshmen and for sophomores, for first years, it is easy to structure your college experience around going to law school. And there's all sorts of websites that will tell you how you should do that. And older students will tell you how to do that. You should not do that. College, especially Penn State, is a great experience. There's so much for you to do and learn. And, you know, it's a great community. I miss it all the time. And there is plenty of time for law school and practicing law. There are a lot of great opportunities at Penn State to do other things, and you might try something and find that you like it more than law, or you might try something and find that it changes the direction you want to go in, and that's perfectly fine. There are a million paths to law school. There's not a right one. There's not a single one. There's not even really an easiest one. You should take classes because you want to take them. You should work with professors because you like them, you think they're interesting, you think they're good people. You know, you should do internships because you're excited about them. If at the end of that process you want to go to law school, you will find a path to law school from wherever you end up. But your guiding principle in your time at Penn State should not be building a strong law school application. It's counterproductive. You know, a lot of law schools will see through that. And even if they didn't, it'd be a waste of, you know, what should be a really great Penn State experience. So those are my 3 things.
I would definitely echo what, sorry, John. I would definitely echo what Brendan said at the end, and also to kind of incorporate an answer to this question on how important are extracurriculars when applying to law school. They're not going to be as important as your LSAT and GPA, but I think the importance is what skills and experiences you gain from them and less what they actually were. So I was very involved in mock trial at Penn State, but I don't think it mattered that I gained like critical thinking and public speaking skills in mock trial. I think it mattered that I gained critical thinking and public speaking skills. So definitely don't choose extracurriculars based on what you think will look good on a resume if that's not actually what you're interested in, and that's not actually how you're going to gain skills that law schools want. And it's pretty easy to tell what skills law school want because the LSAT tests some skills that law schools want, and their website usually tells you it. So I think definitely the hard factors are more important, but also, as Brendan said, your Penn State experience should be one that you would be thrilled with regardless of whether you went to law school. And maybe that's because you were able to gain the skills that will help you in law school and out of law school, but definitely make sure you're choosing extracurriculars that you would love having done, even if you decide not to go to law school.
Yeah, I agree with everyone else. I would say if you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, yeah, even a junior, I would just get involved in things that I would say as many things as possible. I think when I knew I wanted to go to law school, it wasn't an internship. It was more about like human experiences that I encountered and I met that kind of solidified what I wanted to do. And so you're going to meet a friend that might have, I don't know, an issue with the criminal justice system. And you might be like, oh, I want to do something about that. And then that could lead you to law school. And so you'll find like your human experiences at Penn State will probably lead you to whatever you want to do. And then my second advice, I guess, would be no matter what your LSAT score is, apply to the school that you want to go to. I've met people here that did not get even close to the median. I remember when I was my senior year, I would look up law school numbers, which if you're not obsessed with it now, you will be. But I would look every day and see like what numbers got admitted to the school I wanted to go to, and I'd be hyper obsessed with like, oh, I don't have this GPA, I don't have this, I don't have that. But I found that my involvement in Penn State, like I only said I was in UPUA, but I did a whole ton of things my 4 years, and I think that definitely did help my application. And people also will know your name, so you will meet professors and they'll hear about you, or yeah, you'll be in circles and people will know your name because you are involved within the Penn State community. So I would just be present and don't be hyper focused. The hyper focused people, they actually never end up going that year. They have to take a year off or something because they weren't focusing on the right things. So, yeah.
I would say there's meaning too in quality versus quantity. When it comes to extracurriculars, you all are super, super rock stars, and you only do as much as you can handle. And I think that there's transferable skill sets in anything you do, as Daniel was saying, but you need to make that clear in your statement and in your resume. You need to make it evident that that transferable skill set's there, and it also comes with more of a leadership role. So member of 10 organizations and leader in 3, you're probably getting more of those higher level transferable skill sets in those 3 leadership roles than the 10 member roles. So anyone want to touch, we've mentioned LSATs. Did you have a trick for studying? Did you have any suggestions for preparing for that?
I'll just quickly endorse the free Khan Academy course that they developed with LSAC. That's how I studied, and it worked really well for me. I found the course really helpful, and you can't beat free. As for the question about when to start studying, I think it's personal for everyone. I think, by this point in your education, you probably have a sense of, how you study and how what kinds of preparation would be useful. There's no right answer. There's people who study for a long time and find that really helpful. There's people who studying just makes them anxious. I think that there's 2 factors to consider. One of them is, how much time do you think it'll take for you to be able to get a score that you like and that you want, and that's personal. But there's another factor that I think is almost more important, which is how much preparation do you need to do to go into the test on test day and feel comfortable? Because showing up at the test center and feeling unprepared and feeling uncomfortable, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if you're showing up and you're feeling anxious and you're feeling nervous, that's going to cost you some points. So I think one other thing to do is just like when test day is coming up, even just a day before, just stop and remind yourself that you're ready. And even if you're not ready, it's a test. It's not the end of the world. It's not, a judgment on the value of your life. And, make sure that you sort of show up and with this confidence that everything will be okay, because nothing that happens in that test center is going to change that. So I think those are my only thoughts on the LSAT.
With you all answering that, someone just asked specifically too, if you had any advice on the LSAT writing piece too, when you're answering.
It's not graded, so it's okay. Do the best that you can. You can't study for that, so just write. It's not graded. I don't even know if they look at them. I don't know, but yeah. And going back to how I studied for the LSAT, I did Princeton Review first. I took that class. I don't recommend it. Didn't like it very much. And then I took it my second time. So I took it, and then I had 3 weeks to study before January, and I did Manhattan Prep, and I went up by 6 points. So I recommend Manhattan Prep a lot. Yeah.
I'll say with the LSAT, like, to echo a little bit, like, don't worry about the LSAT writing until after you take the LSAT, and then you can look at, like, oh, like, here are some samples of past questions, here's how you can phrase an answer. But you don't have to take it until after you take the LSAT, and the actual LSAT is so much more important. And in terms of how I studied, so I would recommend for questions of like how long you should study, when you should study, one, you should take a diagnostic as soon as you can so that you actually know. Because if you take a diagnostic and it is 30 points below where you want to be, you should study a lot more than if you take a diagnostic and it's 7 points below where you want to be. So definitely give yourself that knowledge by doing it early. And also the LSAT correlates a lot with how people perform on standardized tests tends to correlate a lot. So if you took, especially the SAT, but also the ACT, and you liked what you got and you liked how you studied for it, I would say try that again. When I studied for the SAT, I had a stack of course books. I just read through them and did practice tests. I liked my score on the SAT, and that's what I did for the LSAT. I used the Power Score books. I didn't take a course. I just read through the books, did prep tests, and I was happy with my score. But if you weren't happy with your past standardized test scores, know what to change so that you can be happy with this one. Because also to kind of touch on the question about how I would recommend bettering your chances of going to a T14 or just any law school when you don't think you can raise your GPA that much, it is the LSAT. The LSAT is what you can kind of do at that last step to be like, hey, I suddenly have a chance almost anywhere.
Daniel, can you talk a little more about what the T14 school is, just for those who are just entering their search?
Sure. The U.S. News and World Report has put out rankings for law schools every single year since around the 1980s, mid-1980s. And the T14 are roughly 14 schools that have been ranked at the top almost every single year. For those of you really in the weeds, there are some debates about a few of them, but it's just this marker in the law school world of certain jobs in the legal field. There's a real benefit to going to a T14 school, such as big law, sometimes clerkships, but also I think there's an even bigger benefit to going to a school that you know you'll succeed at and that you like, because you can, like Brenna has 2 wonderful clerkships and really competitive clerkships, and she's not currently at a T14. You don't have to go to a T14, so don't get too into the weeds about going to a school that someone else has told you is good. Make sure you're looking into what kind of jobs you want to do, where those people have gone to schools, what kind of outcomes you want to make sure you're going to a school where you think it's good.
Yeah, if I could just follow up on that, I am a huge proponent of like not stressing out about T14 schools. And I know you all are probably rolling your eyes and are like, of course the girl who goes to Wyoming and that's ranked like 130, like she's probably not stressed about T14s. And that's fair. But I will say that like Daniel said, I am not paying a ton of money to come here. The cost of living is super cheap. I love all my classmates. I really get along with every single person in my class. I've never felt stressed out about people tearing pages out of books or sending me outlines that don't work. And I don't know how much that actually happens at more competitive schools. We hear horror stories, but like, that is what it is. There are definitely things that I would have to work a lot harder for because I'm not from a highly ranked school, but especially I want to practice in the Mountain West. I don't think I'm gonna have any problem getting a job in Colorado, Montana, Utah, Wyoming, which is where I want to be. So I would seriously, like, don't overthink the T14 thing. Go somewhere that makes you happy. I think another piece of advice that I got that has proven to be true is you can go to a T14 school, and the other panelists can feel free to weigh in if I'm completely off base here, but you can go to a really good school where you're in a super competitive class and you might be middle of the road, and you're going to have a lot of good job opportunities just because you went to a big school, but your class rank probably will be like just good. Or you can go to a smaller school, maybe a little less competitive, and do really well. One of the things my professors told me is that he used to go into interviews and he was like, I'm at this like lower ranked law school, and they would say that in his interviews. They would be like, why should I hire you when I can hire someone from Harvard? And he would say, well, I was number one in my class here, but I could have been number one anywhere. Like, you don't know. So take that for what you will, but I will always plug the non-T14 schools. I think I made the right decision for me. And also, just really quick on the LSAT thing, I used a Kaplan prep course. I saved up all this money for the private tutoring. I still like wish I could go back and strangle myself because I wish I would have spent that money like taking a trip or doing something fun. And then I didn't do well on the LSAT. So like I was like, oh, I'm gonna do Kaplan because it's the best one and like it costs more money, so I must get a better score. No, that's not true. And part of that was probably how much I studied, but like I think like Brendan, like take the free class first, see how it goes with the free class. Then if you really, really want to do well and you really feel like you need the extra help, then pay money. But sorry, I just talked a lot, so that's my 2 cents.
No, thank you. I appreciate your perspective.
Can I add one more cent to the T14 discussion? I 100% agree with Brenna on not stressing about the T14, and I want to give 2 really concrete examples. One of them is that over the summer, I stayed at Yale. So Yale is in the T14, and I stayed the summer. I worked in a clinic. I got to have a really awesome experience litigating a class action against the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and I got to do like real meaningful work on stuff that I care about. It was awesome. My 2 partners on that case, neither of them were at T14 law schools, and my supervisor at that case was a professor not at a T14 law school who was consulting with us, who was awesome. And I've had great clinical experiences at Yale. I like all of my supervisors. The best supervisor I've had so far in terms of just like nuts and bolts supervision, and she's a great person, but she's a professor outside of the T14, and we had an awesome working relationship, and she's absolutely brilliant. And I actually asked the registrar at YLS if I could take a clinic down the street at Quinnipiac Law School, and they looked at me like I had 2 heads, and I don't have 2 heads. It would have been an excellent clinical experience. And so that's one. And the second one is, Brenna mentioned the point about, the class rank. So Yale doesn't do class rank, and even still, every year we have people apply for appellate clerkships, which is basically where you get to be an appellate judge's assistant for a year. And it's a great experience. It's super prestigious, super competitive. Many people from Yale Law School apply for and do not get federal appellate clerkships, which Brenna has a 10th Circuit clerkship. And I can tell you for a fact that there are people at Yale Law School last year who would have wanted that clerkship, who almost certainly applied for that clerkship, and who did not get that clerkship. So Yale just got its 25th consecutive #1 U.S. News Law School ranking, and I was applying to a clinic outside of Yale, and my classmates were fighting for the clerkship that Brenna got and lost out to Brenna. And I'm giving some of that credit to Penn State, but I'm also saying that the T14 is overrated.
I think Katie might be frozen.
She's frozen. Oh.
I did.
But, oh wait, she's back.
Yeah.
I'm back. Sorry. I've been having really good luck with my internet, so tonight would be the night. Just to clean up a couple of questions and
Okay. Because we have this lull until Katie comes back, I will also say that you should ask Penn State for money if you're going to spend money on the LSAT, because I got a program at Penn State to fund me hundreds of dollars to purchase LSAT books that I then studied for, and I didn't spend any money on the LSAT. So
You can
ask
also
for that one.
apply for funding for the applications too. The Liberal Arts College will help you fund your applications because, like I said, I applied to a ton of law schools. that gets really expensive. And when you're a student, you have no money. And also I spent all my money on my Kaplan course. So take that for what you will.
Well, thank you all for keep going. I don't know what just happened there. So just some housekeeping. I did put in the chat Kathy Guerin's name and the website to the DUS pre-law advising. Please join her listserv or make an appointment with her to get more information there. So let me pull up this Q&A because that, of course, fell off my screen when that happened. So a little bit, did we talk about internships while I was gone? Nope. Okay, great. So internships, a lot of people are interested in how you found them. I obviously could answer that, but I'll let you guys do that.
I can touch on that. I found all of my internships through Simplicity, I believe it was called. It's a Penn State source. They have every job in every field and every location you could possibly want. And I really took time towards the end of my sophomore year to just kind of gauge what I wanted to do and what I was interested in. And I found some really great opportunities that stuck out to me. And that's kind of how I found all my internships that I did in undergrad. And then from there, I made connections with the people from my internships and even professors who were able to give me opportunities. So I plug that it's really important to network and make those connections with professors or anyone you come across contact with, because a lot of things I've learned, especially in law school, that it's not always about like what you do, but like kind of who you know, and just connecting with that one professor that can put your name out there and give you that really good recommendation can just really go a long way. But Simplicity was a really good start.
We call it Nittany Lion Careers for those who don't know about it. I mentioned it earlier. It's university-wide, so this isn't specific to the College of the Liberal Arts. Everybody has an account. You just need to sign on with your single sign-on.
I'm also, I got all my internships by cold emails, basically. That is a very frustrating way to do things. I will warn you guys, like when I didn't get the State College Police internship sophomore year, I literally emailed every single criminal defense attorney in State College, and I got one response, and it was the guy who said I could work for him. I basically just like marketed myself as like, hey, I'll work for free. Like, I don't know anything about the law, but like, I'll just be around to copy things for you. And I didn't, even with that, I didn't get a lot of responses. So that is kind of how I did it. And so I would just say, don't be afraid of that and don't be discouraged by rejection. I also applied to like the FBI internship, which I think is a pretty, like a thing a lot of crim majors especially want. And I got rejected from that. Like, don't take your rejections personally. And I talked with my friend about this recently. It is a very privileged thing of me to be able to be like, say that I was able to work for free, because a lot of people can't afford to just take an unpaid internship. But the College of Liberal Arts like helped me a lot with that. So I could take unpaid internships for attorneys and then still live on money. So take advantage of the funding that the Liberal Arts College has.
I would just promote both methods. I think it's very important to check out Nittany Lion Careers and other job boards, but I often tell students I'm working with, you don't want to wait for your future to pop up on a job board. So to be proactive, just exactly what Brenna did is what I would suggest to students, especially if they're interested in a law firm, because those, however many you contacted, were never going to be posting in the Nittany Lion Careers and may never have thought of that opportunity or known how to connect with a Penn State student, even if they're in their own backyard. So it's that initiative that is impressive, and that's now building your network. I would also use LinkedIn to do informational interviews. For those of you who are first-year students, sophomores, juniors, you're contemplating law and you're contemplating law school. You know, I found some of our panelists on LinkedIn, right? We didn't necessarily work together when we were here, but you know, alumni are great resources and always willing to help out fellow Penn Staters, and that's why everyone's here tonight. So using, you search by Penn State in LinkedIn, and there's an alumni search tool there, and you can, you know, reach out, and not everyone will get back to you like Brenna, but it's worth the connection and asking for, you know, a 20-30 minute Zoom meeting or Skype meeting or phone call or email or something like that, just to kind of get some ideas and build a network. So yeah, I would promote both of those. The career coach has spoken. So anybody else want to add anything on internships? The idea of internship?
I'll just briefly say that like the one I got from cold emailing and the other one I only knew about because I talked to someone that was in an organization with me, and she had done the internship earlier, and she like helped me with my cover letter and with my resume for the specific internship because she knew the hiring director. So like use other Penn Staters and Penn State alumni as a resource. If you have a place that you want to go, you can search in LinkedIn for Penn State and people that have worked there, and then send them a message. Absolutely. So make sure you use people you know as well, if they're willing to help you, which they usually.
Absolutely. I'm going to kind of take over the conversation a little bit because I'm cognizant of the time right now. We're running it low, but I wanted to hear from our each L1, L2, and L3 just to give a little purview of what law school's like at that year. So we'll start with Daniel and Genevievre, who have just started, and I know you've started in a pandemic, so who knows what it looks like, right? So if you could just share how your first few weeks have been different from undergrad and what you're doing to prepare and stay ahead.
I think in terms of difference, one thing that I really liked is that my entire like year, every 1L has the exact same schedule, like the same class at the same time, not the same teacher, not necessarily the same reading, but that was a lot different because when you're trying to organize stuff, everyone's like, I can do lunch at this time. Of course, can't really do much stuff because of the pandemic, but I will say the biggest difference for me is that Stanford is on a quarter system. So they still try and shove roughly the same amount of information in the first quarter as a lot of law schools do in the first semester, so that you can take electives starting immediately in the winter quarter. And that means that it's a lot of reading, very fast paced. It's a lot of reading definitely everywhere, but I mean, I was an English major at Penn State. I was used to a lot of reading, but you should really get used to a lot of reading. And definitely in my experience, it's just, we'll talk about like one huge topic of like whether employers can be held vicariously liable. And we'll go through like 3 cases in half a class, and then we will not talk about it again. And it will probably show up on the final about like a specific issue of whether this employer can be held liable. So I think lots of reading, a lot more fast paced, has been my experience so far.
Yeah, so I am in Boston. And side note, when you're looking at law schools, I guess now will be a new criteria. I think you should look at how they handled Corona and how they treated their students, because there are some law schools that told their students 2 days before, and now they're, out of luck. And so I think that tells you a lot about the school. But I'm at Northeastern. They actually have this giant like testing system. They transformed, think of like the BJC into a COVID testing center. So I get tested every 3 days, and they do their own testing too. So you get it back in like 24 hours, which is really good. And most of my classes are on campus. Like Dan said, Daniel, sorry, Dan. Everyone has the same classes, just different sections. So I'm like in the red section. And our first year is the only year that we are required to take specific courses, which I don't think it's real. Yeah. And then after that, so what we've already had to do is, so Northeastern, we don't do school year round after our first year. After our first year, we go back and forth between the classroom and co-ops, which are like internships. And so we're back and forth up until we graduate. And we don't have grades or ranking or yeah, really anything. Our grades are like evaluations basically. So think of like kindergarten, like the teacher writes 2 pages about what you did all semester, which has been it definitely takes the stress off. But the stakes are also still high. There is a lot of reading, a lot of reading. But there is also like a lot of support, especially if you're like a minority. Your affinity group will like reach out to you and give you like a lot of resources and provide you with like a lot of support and mentorship. So I would just say it's just a lot of reading. It's really fast paced, but I would say the hardest thing about law school really is like I've had to deal with a lot of imposter syndrome where like I feel like everyone else around me is smarter than me, when that's not the case. They really just like don't know what they're saying either, but you feel like they're smarter than you. And so that's been the hardest thing for me. But I understand everything. I kind of make myself believe I don't understand everything. But yeah, that's, I guess, the hardest thing is different from undergrad, is that I've lost a bit of confidence in my work, if that makes sense. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. And thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. I think I would probably be right there with you, feeling that way in law school for sure. For our L2s, are you engaging in experiences outside the classroom? What's different as you move into the second year?
Yeah, I can start. So I think at least at my school, University of Maryland, a lot of people say that your 2L year is kind of a year you get involved with things. Your 1L year, you kind of just focus on studying and kind of understand law school. So 2L year is definitely a transition because now I'm involved in journal, or you take leadership positions in different organizations. So you definitely have to learn time management in a different structure because you still have all those readings that they mentioned before that you have in 1L year. But overall, I think that definitely getting the grasp of 1L year and how to handle your reading makes it a lot easier when you transition into 2L year and start taking on those other responsibilities. And someone asked if you should like do an internship before law school. And after hearing all the readings that you do your 1L year, I think if you already know you're going to law school, you can take the summer off. Or if it's an internship that you just really love and you really want to do it because you enjoy it, do it. But if you're doing it because you think it's going to be better for you, honestly, take the summer off. You really want it.
Yeah, I'll pick up on that and answer the question. Give yourself at least a few weeks. Like if you're going to do an internship, just like don't do the whole summer, don't do full time. Like give yourself some time to recover. The first semester is probably the most stressful semester. Take care of yourself. As for stuff outside the classroom, I've been lucky that I've had a chance to work on some really cool legal stuff outside of the classroom, working on cases, in a consulting role. I got a chance to write some briefs for a case at the Supreme Court recently that I was really thrilled about, and it was a great experience. I mean, they're getting this guy a new trial who'd been in prison for 20 years. It was one of the coolest experiences I've had so far. I've got a chance to take on an immigration case and just like various like legal work. But also like I play on the Yale soccer team, and that's been really fun. The law school, not the actual team. But like, that's been really fun. And I play music with people, and that's been great. I think one thing, on our first day at school, our dean told us, and I think this is true, that when you're in law school, if you are the most selfish, like career focused, just, totally career minded person, you don't care at all about people, the dominant strategy for you is still to have friends and make sure that people like you. And so if you're not the most career focused, person, and you actually do want to have friends, like that's great, because even if you didn't, it would still be the right strategy. Like your classmates will be your colleagues, your classmates will be opposing counsel. Like it's having good relationships with your law school class is to some extent more important than learning a lot of the law, depending on what you're going to practice. And so do fun things with your friends, do fun things with your classmates, like make time for that. And if you won't do it for its own sake, do it because it's great networking, but do it for its own sake because it's better. So I think those are my thoughts on getting involved.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Brenna, if you can let us know what it's like to feel your last year begin and have things lined up, and how did that work out with the career trajectory, knowing you were going into those already?
So that's it's like kind of a double-edged sword with law school. Like it's very stressful. So my school does have rankings. So it's definitely makes the first year more stressful, because I would say like the pressure is on your first year if you have big goals, you know what I mean? Like if you want to clerk for a judge, or if you want to work at a top law firm or something like that, your first year grades really do matter. And I would say they're pretty much the most important thing. But like I did a ton of extracurriculars at Penn State, and I had to chill it out like my first year of law school, because the grades were more important than like building a million things on your resume. But that being said, the worst semester so far was my first semester of 2L year. That was just like the 1L year is very stressful because you're figuring, yeah, I know, sorry, 2Ls. 1L year is very stressful, I think, because you're figuring it out for the first time and you don't really know what to expect for law school. 2L year is stressful because the classes are just as hard, you're doing just as much work, but you're expected to do other stuff then. You can't just focus on school. Like second year, I was doing an externship for a judge, I was publishing for Law Review, and I was in a bunch of credits. And so it was like a lot more than 1L year when I was just reading and outlining and prepping for my finals at the end of the semester. But that being said, after I made it through like the hell that was the first semester of 2L year, things really kind of tapered down. I knew I had a job beginning of 2L year for the summer. I got my clerkship offers this summer. So that has made this year like a lot more low stress. I have to keep up my grades. Obviously the judges like expect that, but I don't have to like kill myself doing like extracurriculars and continuing to build my resume. So I think that is like one of the best and worst parts about law school. So know that if it's definitely an uphill climb at first, but then once you make it to sort of that midpoint, it should be like sort of a downhill slope. So I think that's like the good and the bad. The other thing I'll say real quick is I think a lot of people, if you've ever asked like a real lawyer if you should go to law school or tell them you're thinking about it, they're gonna be like, oh, here's my advice, don't go. Or at least I heard that all the time. I think that's the worst thing you can say. I love law school. I think it is awesome, which at the risk of sounding like a complete nerd to every single one of you, I think it's super fun. I think it's challenging. I like the people that I've met. I think it's the right career path for me. So if you feel like you have a passion for this and it's what you want to do it, and don't listen to the lawyers who are going to like joke around about how horrible law school is.
I also think, jumping off of that, when people say to you, even now, they're going to say, don't go now, it's going to be online. It's going to be online for the next who knows when. Don't listen to them. If you want to go, and you'll deal with the online. But I don't know anything else. So when people are like, you're missing so much, like I've learned this is just reality now. So don't listen to people that are saying, don't go now because it's online. Just go if you want to go.
I'm going to use that as a kind of a jumping point. I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to hit some of these questions here. I'm guessing from what I'm hearing, nobody took a gap year here. Do you have any experience with those that might have? And did you consider it? And what were some of your thoughts on why or why not?
Yeah, I can. So I obviously think we all went straight through, and they call us K through JDs, which is great. But almost everyone at my law school did not come straight through. It's like 12% of us or something. And there are pluses and minuses. Coming straight out of undergrad means that you're still in the habit of doing a lot of reading and doing a lot of writing and prepping for exams and things like that a lot of people who worked before law school, it's an adjustment to get back into that. I think on the flip side, there's a question in there about, do you have to know what kind of lawyer you want to be? And to some extent you can't. To some extent, until you actually get into this profession and get a sense of, there is no such thing as the practice of law. There's lots of practices that lawyers have, and they do all sorts of things. And you will sort of figure out what you're interested in as you get more and more exposure, and that's fine. I think people who worked before law school sometimes get to start having narrowed that a little bit and have more of a sense of what's important to them. And I think that makes it easier when you're in a class, you're like, why do I have to learn this rule, or why do I have to learn this whatever, to be like, oh no, that matters because it matters for this thing that I've like seen. I I think also you never know what's going to be relevant in your practice and in your life and in your career in the law. And so like every experience that you have, you know, will seep its way into your legal work. And that's just the way things are. And so there's, you know, if you're someone who, if there's something you're excited about doing, do it. If there's an opportunity that you're really fired up about, like, that's fine. Don't decide whether or not to do something based on how it will affect your chances of going to law school. Like, if you feel ready, go. If you're excited about it, go. Like, if there's something else you want to do it. Like, there's not a right answer from the perspective of becoming a law student. There's just a right answer for you as a person who's going to live, you know, a whole life and have to make a lot of decisions like this.
And also, law school will always be there. The other opportunity might not. And people come to law school at all sorts of ages. There's a guy here who entered college before I left elementary school. And there's like, you should definitely just do what you want to do. And if you're unsure about going to law school, don't be like, well, might as well bite the bullet and commit 3 years and a ton of money to this. Try out that other thing, because you can always either defer if you already got in or just come back to law school. The institution is not going anywhere.
And I think there's several ways to do it, right? I talked to an alumna who did paralegal for a couple years, and then looked into law school and is doing it part-time and getting a full ride 3 years post-graduation. So, you know, that's working for her, and that's her plan. And she's had really great life experiences because of it. So you're right, everybody's story is a little bit different, and everybody's resources are a little bit different, and to be aware of them. Anybody read the book 1L? Someone was asking how legit that was. I have not.
By Scott Turow, the like famous one.
Oh.
Well, Brendan's the one at Yale, so I'll maybe he can like answer that better. Or did Scott Turow go to Yale or Harvard? One of those scary ones. It is not that scary, and in fact, I would say that like with your first year, you like freak out about cold calls because you think it's like the most important thing that you like answer the professor's questions right. In my experience, like the professor just cares that you read the case, and they don't expect you to know everything. And the only time I've seen a student get like reamed out and like embarrassed for their wrong answers is when it's very clear that they did not read the case. Otherwise, the professors are very nice. So it is not like as terrifying as like things make it seem.
Yeah, it really isn't that scary. Because we're on Zoom, we have, instead of being cold called, we have panels. And so every day we know when we're going to be called on, and then we're the only people called on that entire day. And so you kind of stress about that day, but even then, like, my classmates will just like group me you, like, don't worry, like, you got it. They're very supportive, and if they'll like chime in with the professor if they feel like you're stuck. So yeah, I'm in like a really supportive environment, so it's really not that scary.
The other thing I'll say on cold calls, because I think it's what everyone panics about, is that it's made because a lot of lawyers don't go to court, but if you go to court can be essentially like a cold call, because the judge will look at you and be like, what do you have to say about this? And you have to be able to think on your feet and give a coherent answer, even if you're not totally sure. And it teaches you to be prepared for those moments. So there is a reason for cold calling that I think is practical once you start practicing.
We have reached 8:01, but if anyone has anything they wanted to say that they want to share with Penn State or to Penn Stater, please feel free to add on your last words of advice.
I'll just add one because it's something I learned early in law school, and I think you'll all appreciate it. There's a professor here, a very famous law professor, who said in an interview once that Yale Law School doesn't take state school students because it's not a remedial institution. That prejudice is completely unfounded. Several of the top students in my class went to state schools. I actually was hired to be a research assistant for that professor, and he didn't know where I went to college, and then I told him, and that was a fun experience. You are going to be very well prepared, and the imposter syndrome is real. I felt it too, and it's important to like name that and know that, you know, a lot of people are experiencing that, but you will be well prepared, as well prepared as any of your classmates. I would put my Penn State education up against the education of any one of my classmates. 42% of my classmates went to Ivy League schools. We have several Rhodes Scholars. I tell you right now, and I'm completely honest, I would put my Penn State education against any of their educations, and I think it would compare favorably. And so you are prepared, you go to a great college, a great university, and it's important to know that, especially if you go to law school and you might not always feel that.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. I know just coming, I live with a ton of people that have like a ton of friends from undergrad here, and there's no one else at Stanford from Penn State, which is a little sad, but maybe some of you will join me. But I would definitely also say, like, feel free to reach out to me at least. I'm assuming other people on this panel because they agreed to do it. If you find people on LinkedIn and send them a message, or I'm willing to throw my email in the chat. Talking to people about this has been so helpful to me. I know I talked to Brendan before I decided on law school, and he was super helpful. And people are more than eager to pay it forward and help other Penn Staters, especially when, as Brendan said, like, you're entering the same field. And I not only want to help you because maybe you'll help me later, but I want to help you because I was really helped by so many Penn Staters in my experience. And it's just something that's lovely for everyone. And I heard this so many times when I went to panels, and it was so rare that I actually reached out because I was like, oh, they're just saying that, like, they're super busy, like, they don't have time. But then I started saying it, and I was like, they're not just saying that. Like, they want you to reach out. It's something that, like, if they can say, I'm taking a 15-minute break from my reading so that I can, like, have a phone call with this person, it is going to just make someone's day to have such a good excuse to postpone the reading just a little bit more.
Thank you all. You're seeing contact information being put in the chat right now for these wonderful panelists. You warm my heart. I really appreciate everything you're doing and giving back. And I'm sure I'll be in contact because our L1s will need to be our L2s next year, and our L2s will need to be our L3s on the panel. So we'll keep up the tradition with this very first one. I didn't mean to cut anyone else off. Anyone have anything to say?
Please reach out if you want to talk. I'd love to talk. And I also think that when you go to law school, don't change the way you are. If you don't talk with fancy words, which people will add these soliloquies in class to make you feel like you don't even know half the words, when they could ask that same question in 2 sentences, then that's fine. And you don't need all the fluff. Just be yourself. Be yourself. Everyone's speaking. But yeah, just reach out, please. I'd love to talk.
Yeah, I think that's why Penn Staters are awesome, is because we don't feel the need to prove to everyone how smart we are. We just know we went to an awesome school. We have a much higher ranked football team than like pretty much every other school. So like that's why we're a lot more fun in law school.
Well, thank you all so much. I very much appreciate it. And I definitely keep in contact, and I would love to hear from you all and let me know how the students are connecting with you. With that said, thank you all for joining us on a Tuesday evening for a wonderful discussion. The recording will be up and you'll find it in our marketing in the next week. So thanks again. It was great to see you all. Good luck.